We use simple little rules of logic every single day, and we never give them a second thought. But what's amazing is that some of these rules have been on an incredible journey, traveling through thousands of years of human history just to get inside our heads. Today, we're going to track one of the most fundamental of them all.
So it all starts with an argument that I guarantee you've heard a million times. You hear it in politics, in business meetings, pretty much everywhere. It's that classic, if we do this one thing.
And then, sure enough, here comes the next link in the chain. Then this other thing is going to happen. It just feels so natural, right? So intuitive. It's like we're just lining up dominoes in our mind. So the big question is, can we make that final jump? If A leads to B and B leads to C, is that connection between A and C totally guaranteed? I mean, it seems obvious, doesn't it? But the story behind why it feels so obvious is like the entire history of logic, all packed into one little rule. This whole pattern, it actually has a formal name, the hypothetical syllogism. Now, you might also hear it called the chain rule, which is a fantastic description. Or if you want to get technical, the transitivity of implication. But whatever you call it, it's this simple, powerful idea that you can link if-then statements together. So where in the world did this idea even come from? Well, to find the source, we've got to rewind the clock, way back, over 2,000 years, to ancient Greece, and try to think of this less like a dusty history lesson and more like the start of an incredible intellectual relay race. Okay, so what's really interesting here is that there was this kind of split in early Greek thinking. On one side, you've got the giant, Aristotle. His logic was all about classes and categories. All humans are mortal. It was about putting things into boxes. But then you had the Stoics, and they were focused on something different, propositions. They cared about how entire sentences connect to each other, especially with those magic words, if, then. And that way of thinking is what really put our chain rule on the map. And just listen to this. This is a direct formulation of the rule from the 3rd century BCE. I mean, how incredibly modern does that sound? It's all right there. The Stoics had figured out the essential idea and handed off the very first baton in this massive, centuries-long relay race. So the Stoics started it, but how did this idea even survive the fall of Rome, the Dark Ages, and all the chaos that followed? Well, that baton was passed very, very carefully from one generation of thinkers to the next. Let's just follow the journey for a second. So after the Stoics, you've got this Roman philosopher, Boethius, who acted as this crucial bridge. He translated and saved all this Greek logic for the Latin-speaking Middle Ages. Then medieval scholars like Peter of Spain just meticulously cataloged it. And by the 17th century, you have a genius like Leibniz dreaming of a universal language for all reasoning, where rules like this would be the absolute bedrock. The baton was still moving, gaining momentum. But the final leg of the race, the home stretch, that happened in the 19th and 20th centuries. This is when logic collided with mathematics, and everything, and I mean everything, changed. This was the modern finish line. And boom, here it is. This is the rule in its final, glorious form. Thinkers like George Boole, Augustus de Morgan, and Gottlob Frege basically turned logic into a type of math. All those words, if, then, and, they became these clean little symbols and arrows. And the whole idea of linking them together became this elegant, undeniable formula. It's the exact same idea the Stoics had, just proven to be absolutely airtight in the language of modern logic. And what's really cool is that modern systems can prove why it works using even simpler building blocks. Let's just walk through it real quick. Step 1, just pretend A is true for a second. Step 2, well, we already know if A then B, so now we can say for sure that B is true. Step 3, and since we also know if B then C, we can now get to C. So step 4, look what happened. By assuming A was true, we were logically forced, step by step, to accept C. The chain holds, it's simple, it's airtight, and it's kind of beautiful. Okay, so the rule is ancient, it's powerful, and it's proven. But, and this is a huge but, you can't just use it carelessly. In the real world, this is where things get super tricky, and you've got to pay close attention, because sometimes the chain can suddenly snap. So it all comes down to this one critical question. What does your little arrow, your if-then connection, actually represent? Is it a strict, ironclad logical guarantee, or is it just describing some fuzzy relationship out in the messy real world? Because the answer to that question is, well, it's everything. This makes it perfectly clear. On the left, we've got a relation that works. If London is south of Manchester and Manchester is south of Edinburgh, then it's absolutely 100% true that London is south of Edinburgh. The relationship is south of is transitive. The property carries all the way through the chain. But now look at the right. City A is near City B, and City B is near City C. Does that mean City A is near City C? Maybe not. City C could be way on the other side of B, miles and miles from A. The relationship is near is not transitive. And this is so important because a chain of reasoning can feel totally right, but lead you to a completely false conclusion if the links aren't the right kind. So, after this whole 2,000-year adventure, what's the big takeaway for us today? Why does knowing about the hypothetical syllogism actually make you a sharper thinker? It basically gives you two amazing skills for your critical thinking toolkit. First, it's a blueprint. It shows you how to build your own strong, clear, logical arguments step by step. But second, and this might be even more important, it's a warning light. When you hear somebody else making one of these chain arguments, it trains you to stop and ask the crucial question. Wait a minute, are those links actually transitive? You learn not to just assume the chain works, but to check if the relationship is guaranteed to carry through. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. We've just unpacked the incredible story of one simple, obvious rule. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other obvious tools of thought are we using every single day, completely unaware of the fascinating journey they took to end up right here in our own heads? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to give you a mental toolkit. Think of it like X-ray vision for arguments. It's all about cutting through that confusing language to see what someone is actually trying to say. All right, let's just jump right in with a real-world headline that, well, it probably made you read it twice. Squad helps dog bite victim. It's one of those classic sentences that just trips you up. I mean, wait a second. Is the squad helping the dog bite someone, or are they helping the person who got bitten by a dog? You see this kind of messy, confusing language all over the place. But the good news is there's a really simple, super powerful technique to clear it all up. So let's talk about that core tool I mentioned, the one that gives you that X-ray vision. It's called standard form. And honestly, it's a game changer for bringing clarity to, well, pretty much any argument you come across. So what is it, really? Well, the whole idea is to break an argument down into these clean, separate statements. Each line becomes something you can actually check. You're basically building a little checklist for what's true and what's not. Okay, check this out. Here's standard form in action. We're taking a vague claim like shop at Walmart, they have better prices, and cleaning it up. See how we don't just say better prices? We get specific, lower per unit prices. But here's the really crucial part. We've added that second statement, that hidden bridge. It's the unstated assumption that connects the prices to why you should shop there. And let me tell you, this is exactly where a lot of weak arguments hide their flaws. Okay, so you've got the main tool down. Now let's build out your toolkit, right? We're going to look at some of the most common traps you'll see out there and the quick fixes for them. So first up, you got to translate all that colorful language into plain, simple facts. That metaphor, like watching paint dry, yeah, it's emotional, it's vivid, but what does it mean? It means this documentary is very boring to me. Same thing with those vague glow words like environmentally friendly. That word is basically meaningless until you replace it with hard data, something you can actually measure, like reduce nitrogen runoff by 35%. You should always be asking, okay, but what does that actually mean? You have heard this slogan, or ones just like it, a million times. It sounds good, it's catchy, but if you look at it logically, there's a huge hole in the middle of it. This brings us to a huge takeaway. You have got to ask, better than what? Stronger than what? Compared to what? How are we measuring it? Over what time? A word like better is totally meaningless without a specific point of comparison. So if someone just says something is stronger, but doesn't tell you what it's stronger than, you just have to flag it. You can't evaluate it. And you've got to watch out for those sneaky weasel words like virtually or helps. The way to deal with them is to pin them down. Demand a number. What are the actual odds? Give me a clear threshold. And this is a perfect example of a classic ambiguity trap. The argument sounds logical, right? But that's only because the word right is secretly doing double duty. It means two different things. The fix is to pull that messy word apart
and look at its two separate meanings. Once you do that, you can check if the argument still works, and, a lot of the time, it just completely falls apart.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit and look at some more advanced traps. Now we're talking about situations where it's not just one fuzzy word causing trouble. It's the whole structure of the argument that's shaky from the get-go. You have to be really careful when someone argues from the parts to the whole. We could call this the salad fallacy. Think about it. Just because the lettuce, tomatoes, and spinach are all fresh, does that guarantee the salad is fresh? What if the dressing is rancid? The way things are combined, or what else gets added to the mix, that can change everything.
Some logical chains are just rock solid. The relationship south of is one of them. It's consistent. If A is south of B and B is south of C, then A is always going to be south of C. No doubt about it. But other relationships, especially vague ones like close to, they don't have that same guarantee. Jack can be close to the pond, and the pond can be close to the playground, but that doesn't mean Jack is close to the playground at all. That kind of logic can totally break down and lead you way off track.
Okay, you've got the tools, you've seen the traps. Now let's put it all into practice. We're going to do a quick, rapid-fire workout to make sure these skills really stick. First one up, real fans buy premium seats. Okay, this makes a pretty big claim about what it means to be a real fan. So what's the actual testable argument hiding in there? So here's how you fix it, and it's a two-step process. First, you take that fuzzy word, premium, and you translate it into something you can measure, like seats with a 20% higher sightline score. Then, step 2, you have to state that hidden assumption, the part they don't say out loud. In this case, it's that a real fan's main goal is getting a better view. Once you make that hidden piece visible, now you can actually evaluate the claim. All right, next one. This is an absolute classic you will see in any grocery store. New and improved cereal with natural goodness. So, grab your toolkit. How are you going to deconstruct this one? It's simple, right? First, you have to demand specifics for new and improved. Improved how? Compared to what? Give me the numbers. And second, you spot natural goodness for what it is, a totally empty marketing buzzword. It's a glow phrase, so you just toss it out. Okay, and for our last practice round, let's circle back to that tricky argument about rights, but this time we've added a little bit more to it. And here's why this is so important. By putting it in standard form, you shine a spotlight on the broken bridge in the logic. The whole argument depends on this hidden and frankly false assumption that just because you're allowed to do something, your legal right, that it's automatically the wise thing to do. And once you see that faulty connection, the whole thing just collapses. So there you have it. You've officially got the toolkit. You now know how to take messy, persuasive language and turn it into clean, structured arguments that you can actually put to the test. So go out there and use it. Start seeing the world and all the arguments in it a whole lot more clearly.
All right, let's get right into it. We're going to pull back the curtain on what makes an argument actually work, what makes it persuasive. And here's a hint. It's not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about a hidden structure that, I promise, once you see it, you're going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere.
You know that feeling, right? You're in a debate, maybe it's about something big, maybe it's just about where to get dinner, and you're just talking in circles. It feels like you're laying out perfectly good facts, but for some reason, they're just not landing. Well, there's a very specific reason for that.
Okay, let's take a super simple argument. The reason is a fact. This phone has a larger battery. The claim is what you should do, so you should buy it. But wait a minute, what's the invisible string connecting those two ideas? Why does larger battery automatically mean buy this phone? There's a link missing here.
That secret link, that invisible bridge that makes the whole thing work? Well, it has a name. It's called a warrant, and it is the absolute key to making an argument stand on its own 2 feet.
So a warrant is basically the unstated rule or principle that everyone has to agree on for your reason to actually support your claim. In that phone example, the unspoken warrant is something like, a larger battery gives you longer battery life, and longer battery life is a really important feature in a phone. If your audience doesn't buy into that rule, the fact about the battery just hangs there, totally useless.
The warrant is the heart of it, but it's really part of a whole toolkit for building an argument that's practically airtight. To make it truly strong, you need a few more pieces. You need backing to prove your rule is sound, qualifiers to show you understand its limits, and rebuttals to head off counterarguments. Let's see how this whole system works together.
Let's make this real. Imagine this. The claim is, pick Stream Max. The reason?
It's cheaper than Cineplus for the exact same shows. The warrant, the rule we're all working with, is that when two things are equal, cheaper is better. But a great argument thinks one step ahead. It anticipates the, yeah, but what if? That's the rebuttal. Unless StreamMax is hiding the best shows behind some extra fee. Acknowledging that possibility makes your original argument way more credible.
Okay, so now that we have the basic skeleton, let's talk about how to make it totally bulletproof. This is all about supporting your logic and being ready for challenges before they even pop up. Now this is so important. You don't just back up your initial reason, you have to back up your warrant. You have to prove that the rule itself is solid. You can do that by explaining how it works, or by pointing to data, or citing a relevant expert. This is really what separates a casual opinion from a truly rigorous argument.
And this just perfectly shows the power of adding those qualifiers and rebuttals. A simple, fragile claim like, "this policy works," is just so easy to poke holes in. But a robust claim? It admits its own limits. It says usually, and it even names the specific conditions where it might fail. It shows you've thought things through, which makes you sound way more trustworthy.
We see arguments like this all the time, right? It feels persuasive, it sounds logical, but what is it actually saying? What's the hidden warrant? The implied rule is something like, the quality of ingredients is the only thing that determines how good a pizza is. But it's so thin. Better than what? According to who? So to fix an argument like that, you have to drag the hidden parts out into the open, name a competitor, define your metric. For instance, our sauce uses vine-ripened tomatoes, unlike competitor X's paste, which is why we score higher in blind taste tests. See? Now we have a real, testable argument, not just a catchy slogan. Okay, let's scale this whole thing up. We can take this same logic from pizza slogans and apply it to analyzing really complex, real-world policy decisions. And this is where this framework becomes incredibly powerful. So instead of just making a case for one option, the strongest way to argue is to compare it directly against another. You start with the goal, you define your options, and you pick clear criteria to measure them by. Then, you gather the evidence, you state your decision rule, that's your warrant, and only then do you make a final call. Let's use a real debate. Should a city put a fee on plastic bags or just ban them completely? The goal is to reduce waste. By laying it out like this, we can compare the options across multiple criteria: how much they reduce bag use, any unintended consequences like people buying thicker trash bags instead, and, of course, public acceptance.
And here's a key piece of evidence you'd plug in. In cities that tried a fee, it caused a massive 70 to 80% reduction in bag use. That's a hard, checkable fact, not just someone's opinion. This is the kind of stuff you need for your framework. And all of that evidence leads us to our warrant, our decision-making rule. And the rule is pretty logical. When two different tools get you similar results, you should probably prefer the one with fewer negative side effects and the one that the public is more likely to go along with. See how that warrant makes the conclusion feel almost obvious?
So this isn't just some theory. This is a practical skill. It's like a superpower for your brain that you can practice and use every single day. In fact, let's do a couple of quick practice reps right now.
Okay, first exercise. Someone says we should switch to a 4-day school week because other districts saved a ton of money. The reason is clear, it saves money. The claim is clear, we should do it. But what's the hidden warrant? It's something like this. If a change can lower costs without hurting educational outcomes, then we should do it. Spotting that is so important because the whole debate is going to be about that second part. Does it actually cause any harm?
All right, now let's try building one. The original claim is pretty weak. Go with provider A, they have more staff. Let's use our framework. What's the real goal here? Quick access to care. So what are the criteria? Wait time, cost, things like that. We check the evidence and find that provider B, even with fewer clinicians, actually has shorter wait times. So our conclusion based on the evidence now flips. We prefer provider B. That's a much smarter analysis.
And here you have it. This is a checklist you can literally run through in your head in any conversation. State your goal. State your reasons as facts. And, most importantly, name the warrant that connects them. Then, just add the other pieces, clean up any fuzzy words, and you will be making arguments that are clear, logical, and really, really hard to argue with.
So the next time you hear a political ad, or you see a commercial, or you even get into a debate about what to watch tonight, listen for it. Listen for that hidden structure. Listen for the warrant. Because once you start seeing the logic, or the lack of it, you can't unsee it. So what's an argument you're going to hear today that you'll now see in a completely different light?
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, We're constantly swimming in this sea of emotional noise, right? So how do you find the actual truth? Well, today, we're going to learn exactly that, how to fact-check our own feelings.
I mean, we hear stuff like this all the time, right? It's designed to hit you fast and hard, to make you feel something, usually fear, before your brain even has a chance to catch up and think.
And then you get this one. This is a classic tactic, right? It's all about guilt. It's designed to frame the whole issue so there's only one right way to think. Their way. It's basically trying to box you in emotionally. Honestly, it can feel completely overwhelming. It's like being in a storm of emotional arguments. So how do we find our footing? How do you tell the difference between a real, fact-based concern and something that's just designed to mess with you?
Okay, so let's build that toolkit right here, right now. We're going to put together a simple but really powerful mental framework to help you do just that, fact-check your feelings and the claims that set them off.
All right, first things first, let's really get a handle on the challenge here. What we're dealing with are arguments that are specifically built to hit you with an emotional punch first, and maybe, just maybe, a logical tap second. The whole point is to bypass your rational brain entirely. So, our very first tool is what I like to call the 30-second triage. Seriously, think of it like a mental Swiss Army knife. It's something you can whip out for instant clarity on pretty much any emotional claim that comes your way.
This 5-step process, this is the heart of our whole toolkit. What it does is take a hot, emotionally charged claim and just cools it right down, turning it into something you can actually look at and evaluate. You just name the emotion, translate the claim, add the why, check the source, and then you decide if the argument is actually strong. It's super simple and you can do it over and over again.
Okay, that's enough theory. Let's get our hands dirty and put this tool to the test. We're going to run through a kind of rapid-fire training gauntlet. We'll take some really common emotional appeals and just push them through our triage process to see what happens. You ready?
First up, the appeal to fear. The word disastrous, it's so vague, right? It's just meant to be scary. But the fix? It translates that feeling of fear into a specific, measurable outcome. All of a sudden, we have a place, a number, a percentage, and a time frame. Now that is a checkable fact, not just some scary feeling.
Okay, next up, the appeal to pity. Look, heartbreaking images are incredibly powerful, we all know that. But they don't actually tell you if your donation is going to be effective. So the fix here is to shift the focus from pure emotion to actual evidence of impact. We start looking for things like efficiency and independent verification.
And now for the appeal to anger. The word disrespected is so subjective. What does that even mean in the real world? The fix is to turn that vague insult into a specific, verifiable action. Did the company fund a lobbying effort? See, that's a question you can actually answer with a yes or no.
Oh, here's a sneaky one, the appeal to pride. This is really an attack on your identity, isn't it? Are you a real fan or not? The fix is to just ignore that. Ignore the identity attack and instead focus on a measurable benefit. Now you can decide for yourself if a 20% better view is actually worth the money.
And last but not least, the bandwagon appeal. You know the one. Everyone is doing it. Everyone is such a classic exaggeration, so the key is to translate everyone into specific real numbers. That way you get a true sense of the momentum without all that social pressure.
Okay, so you've pretty much mastered how to translate the claim itself. Awesome. But now it's time for a critical upgrade to your toolkit. A quick, 90-second check on the source. Because let's be real, who is making the claim can be just as important as what they're claiming.
These 4 questions are going to be your guide. First up, expertise fit. Simple question. Do they actually have the right skills for this claim? Is a celebrity actor the best person to listen to about climate science? Probably not. Second, the bias channel. Basically, who pays them, who benefits if you believe this. Always, always follow the money. Third is agreement. Is what they're saying way out in left field, or is it pretty much in line with what other experts are saying? And finally, method or access. How do they know what they know? Is it transparent? A leaked government report is a whole different ballgame from an anonymous source told me.
Let's put this check into action with something you see all the time, a health supplements claim. Okay, so the source is the manufacturer's own blog. Right away, that's a huge red flag for bias, right? They want to sell it. Then you look at the method. They're citing a tiny, uncontrolled study. So what's the verdict? Confidence is low.
Now, this doesn't automatically mean the claim is false, but it absolutely means we need way better evidence, preferably from someone who isn't trying to sell us something.
All right, it's time to put it all together. Let's combine our two big tools, the 30-second triage for the claim and the 90-second check for the source. We're going to do 2 full repairs on arguments you could literally see any day of the week. This is where the magic happens.
Okay, here's a total classic, probably from a local election mailer or something. It's short, it's punchy, and it hits you with that powerful fear button. Crime is out of control. But what does that actually mean?
Now, take a look at the repaired version. The absolute key here is specificity. Crime becomes robberies. Out of control becomes a 14% rise year over year in a specific district. And here's the kicker. It adds that crucial comparison. The citywide rate actually fell. See? Now we have a real data-driven argument we can actually sink our teeth into.
And here's another one. I'd bet money you've seen this 100 times. Some health product ad that says it's clinically proven to do something amazing. It sounds so official, so scientific, right? But it's totally, completely empty of any real detail.
So the fix is to replace that empty phrase with the details that actually matter. What was the study design? How many people were in it? And what was the actual result? A 6% increase? Maybe that's a huge deal for you, or maybe it's not. But the point is, now you get to make that decision based on data, not just some slick marketing slogan.
So there you have it. We've built the toolkit, we've run through the drills, we've seen how it all works in the real world. Now it's your turn. Time for you to take the controls and put these new skills to work.
Okay, your first challenge. Here's that classic guilt trip claim again. How would you translate this one? Go ahead and pause for a second and really think about it. What specific, checkable fact could you use to replace this purely emotional attack?
And for your final test, let's talk about an influencer claim. Now remember, don't just focus on what they're saying, focus on the source. What 4 questions from our credibility checklist would you fire off about this influencer before you even considered their claim? So, the big takeaway here is this. The next time an argument makes you feel something really strong, remember that feeling is a signal. It's not a signal to believe, it's a signal to start digging.
Okay, let's kick things off with a little puzzle. If every single brick you use to build a wall is perfectly strong, does that automatically mean the wall itself is going to be strong? I mean, it seems like it should, right? But what about the mortar you're using? What about the foundation it's sitting on? This simple question gets right to the heart of a sneaky little flaw that pops up in arguments all the time. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We are going to build your critical thinker's toolbox. We'll fill it with some simple but really powerful tools to help you spot these flaws, call them out, and make your own arguments absolutely rock solid. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to unpack this whole idea of a reasoning toolkit. Then, we'll grab our first tool, which is all about arguments dealing with parts and wholes. From there, we'll look at how some arguments link together like a chain. And we'll wrap things up with some quick maintenance tips to keep all your arguments sharp. All right, first tool out of the box, I like to call it the part and whole caliper. Think about it, we're constantly making claims about things based on their components or the other way around. You know, like a sports team, a recipe, a piece of software. This tool helps us measure whether those arguments actually hold up. Now, this tool works in 2 directions. On one side, we have composition. That's when we reason from the individual parts up to the whole thing. And on the other side, we have division, where we go from the whole down to one of its parts. They look like they're just opposites, but you'll see the rules for using them are pretty unique. Let's look at a safe example of composition. Step 1, we know every single ingredient in the salad. Nothing's hidden. Step 2, we know each one is fresh. And step 3, and this is so crucial, nothing in the process of actually making the salad has ruined that freshness. Because all those conditions are met, the conclusion that the salad is fresh, yeah, that's solid. So for a part-to-whole argument to really work, you need 2 things. First, you have to account for all the important parts and only the important parts. And second, you've got to rule out any spoilers. You know, anything in the process of putting them together that could ruin the very quality you're talking about, like a bad dressing on a perfectly good salad. And when you break those rules, well, that's when you commit the composition fallacy. And this happens all the time. It's when you just assume the whole has a certain quality just because its parts do, and you completely ignore those potential spoilers or any missing pieces. It's basically assuming the wall is strong just because the bricks are strong. Okay, now let's flip it and look at division, going from the whole down to the parts. Let's say you work on a really efficient team. Does that guarantee that your specific little sub-team is also efficient? Not necessarily. Maybe one part of the team is doing all the heavy lifting, you know? The property of efficiency just doesn't automatically distribute itself to every single part.
You see, for a whole-to-part argument to be valid, the property you're talking about has to be distributive. It's a fancy-sounding word, but it just means it's a quality that reliably transfers down to the individual parts. For example, if a car is red, its doors are almost certainly red. Redness is distributive. But efficiency, like we just saw, not so much. Okay, let's put that tool down and grab our second one, the transitive chain. This is for all those arguments that link things together in a sequence. You know, if A is related to B and B is related to C in the exact same way, can we confidently say that A is related to C? This tool helps us test the strength of every link in that chain.
At the heart of this tool is this idea of a transitive relation. Again, it sounds a little academic, but it's a super simple concept. It's basically a relationship that can carry through a chain. Like, if A is taller than B and B is taller than C, you know for a fact that A is taller than C. Taller than is a transitive relation. The chain holds.
Here's a perfect working chain in action. Premise A, London is south of Manchester. Got it? Premise B, Manchester is south of Edinburgh. Okay, because that relationship south of is transitive, the chain connects perfectly. We can confidently conclude that Edinburgh must be north of London. The logic is just unbreakable.
But what about this one? Jack is close to the pond. The pond is close to the playground. So is Jack close to the playground? Well, maybe, maybe not. The word close is fuzzy. It only looks like a transitive relation, but it's weak. The fix, you have to quantify it. If you define close as, say, within 30 meters, then you can actually do the math and see if the chain holds up.
And you know, that lost example about being close brings us to our final section, tool maintenance. Because even the best tools get rusty if you don't take care of them. And when it comes to arguments, the biggest cause of rust is fuzzy, vague language. So fixing those vague terms is the absolute key to keeping your reasoning sharp. So here's a super practical checklist for you. First, define your fuzzy words. What does clothes or tall or fresh actually mean in this specific argument? Put a number on it if you can. Second, watch out for those subjective glow words like best or natural. They sound good, but they often don't mean much. And third, make sure you don't change the subject halfway through. That last point actually has a name. It's called scope drift. It's a classic move where an argument starts with evidence about one specific thing, like plastic bags, and then suddenly jumps to this huge conclusion about something much broader, like all single-use plastics. You've got to make sure the scope of your evidence matches the scope of your conclusion. All right, it's time to put your new tools to work. Here's a simple statement you'd see online any day of the week. Twitter is not working now. It was up earlier, so its status has changed. Seems totally obvious, right? But is it logically airtight? How would you make it stronger? Okay, this is your chance to practice. In just a moment, I want you to actually pause this explainer and say the fix out loud. What are the fuzzy terms that need to be defined? What specific checks would make this argument completely unshakable? Go on, pause it now. Welcome back. So, did you get it? To really fix this, you have to pin down all the details. First, you have to identify the exact time points. Earlier becomes T1 and now becomes T2. Second, you have to define working. Are we talking about its official status page? And third, you have to keep the scope identical. If you check the same status page and it said operational at T1 and major outage at T2, then yes, the conclusion is solid. Okay, let's try one more. This is a classic composition argument. These four components are reliable, so the system is reliable. What's missing here? What are the key questions you need to ask before you can agree with this conclusion? All right, one more time, let's do this. Grab your part and whole caliper for this one. What's missing from that statement? What are the potential spoilers you need to rule out? Go ahead, pause here, and say the fix out loud. And here's the fix. First, you have to add that critical condition, and these are the only components that matter. Second, you need to define reliability for the whole system. Are we talking about an uptime target? And third, you have to rule out all those spoilers. Things like software bugs, power failures, or even user error that could make the whole system totally unreliable, even if the individual parts are great. So really, it all boils down to this simple three-step process. When you hear an argument, first, name the pattern. Is it a part and whole thing? Is it a chain? Second,
check the rules for that specific pattern. And third, fix the fuzzy bits, define your terms, and lock down your scope. That's it. That's the whole game.
You now have a powerful new set of tools in your critical thinking toolbox. They're simple, they're fast, and they really do work. So the only question left is this: what argument that you hear today, at work, online, from a friend, is going to be the first one you check?
All right, today we're going to build a mental toolkit. Seriously, I'm going to hand you a framework that lets you analyze, critique, and even improve pretty much any argument you come across. The goal? To make you a sharper thinker, and we're going to do it in just a few minutes.
You know that feeling, right? You hear something and a little alarm goes off in your head. Something just doesn't sound right, but you can't quite put your finger on why. Well, by the time we're done here, you're going to have the tools to do just that, and fast.
Okay, let's dive right in. Look, every great skill starts with the basics, right? So think of this first section as the master key to your new toolkit. It's all about learning to see the hidden architecture behind the words people use.
So to unlock pretty much any argument, you just need to ask 3 little questions. First, what's the claim? What's the actual point they're trying to make? Second, what are the reasons? This is the because part. What's the evidence? And third, this is a secret ingredient, what's the warrant? The warrant is that unstated belief, the hidden rule that connects the reason to the claim. So if someone says, the sky is dark, so it's going to rain, the reason is the sky is dark, the claim is it's going to rain. The warrant? It's that unstated belief that dark skies mean rain is coming. You get these 3 down, and trust me, you're already halfway there.
All right, so once you've got the basic parts figured out, it's time for a quality check. I always think of an argument like a building. It's got a blueprint, right? That's its logical form. And it's got building materials. That's the truth of what's being said. For an argument to be solid, it's got to have both.
So let's look at that blueprint first. We call an argument with a perfect structure valid. This means if the starting points, the premises, are true, the conclusion is absolutely guaranteed. It can't be false. You see the example? If A leads to B and B leads to C, well then A has to lead to C. It's a perfect airtight chain. But then you have a strong argument. This is all about probability. The evidence makes the conclusion super likely, but it's not a 100% guarantee. That bag fee example is perfect. Yeah, it worked in a bunch of other cities, so it will probably work here, but is it guaranteed? Nope. And honestly, most arguments you're going to hear day to day are aiming for strong, not perfectly valid.
Okay, now for the materials, the actual truth of the statements. So, when you have a valid argument, that's the one with the perfect structure, and its premises are also actually true in the real world, we call that a sound argument. That's the gold standard. It's perfect. For the other kind, the probability-based ones, when a strong argument has premises that are backed by good, solid evidence, we call it cogent. So just think of it this way. Sound is for perfect deductive logic, and cogent is for really reliable, everyday evidence-based arguments.
All right, now for the really fun part, spotting the traps. We're going to do a quick bug scan. Logical fallacies are basically just common bugs, system errors in our thinking that can totally trip us up if we're not careful. Let's just do a quick fire round of the biggest offenders.
First up, the ad hominem. This is a classic. It's Latin for to the person, and that's exactly what it is. Instead of dealing with the argument, you just attack the person making it. Like, why should we listen to his financial advice? He dresses terribly. See? It's a total distraction and a huge red flag that someone's run out of actual points.
Then we have the slippery slope. Oh, this one's everywhere. It's when someone claims that one tiny innocent step is going to lead to this unavoidable, catastrophic chain of events. If we allow this, then this will happen, and then the whole world will end. It's all doom and gloom without any real evidence to back up that chain reaction.
Next up, the false dilemma. This is a sneaky one. It tries to box you in by presenting only 2 options, as if they're the only 2 options in the entire universe. The classic is, you're either with us or you're against us. But wait a minute, what if you're neutral? What if there's a 3rd or a 4th option? It's a way to shut down conversation.
The hasty generalization. We are all guilty of this one sometimes. It's when you jump to a massive conclusion based on a tiny little bit of evidence. I met one rude person from that city, so everyone from that city must be rude. You see? It's drawing a huge circle around a tiny dot.
Okay, the appeal to popularity. This is the good old bandwagon argument. Well, everyone believes it, so it must be true, right? But popularity doesn't equal truth. History is filled with popular ideas that turned out to be completely wrong. It's just not a substitute for actual hard evidence. And let's wrap this section up with post hoc. Fancy Latin, but all it means is, after this, therefore because of this. It's the classic mistake of thinking that just because B happened after A, then A must have caused B. The perfect example is the rooster crowing right before sunrise. Yeah, it happens every time, but the rooster isn't causing the sun to come up. Correlation is not causation.
Okay, so spotting problems is one thing, and it's a great skill. But being able to fix them, that's next level. This is how you move from just being a critic to actually being a builder of smarter, stronger arguments. So let's look at a few quick fixes.
So let's take a super common, super vague statement like this. Brand pizzas are better. I mean, okay, better than what? Better in what way? In taste? Price? Size? Right now, this statement is just kind of floating out there. It's totally untestable.
But watch this. Check out the fix. We just add two simple things, a comparator, then named rivals, and a metric, based on this month's blind taste test scores. Boom. Suddenly that vague opinion is a specific, debatable, and honestly, a much more persuasive argument. Now we have something we can actually talk about.
And here are a few more quick repairs for your toolkit. Throw in a qualifier like probably or usually to make your claim more honest. Be specific about your scope. Are we talking about this year or all time? And a huge one for me, translate those fluffy buzzwords. Instead of saying something is innovative, explain what is new about it.
Okay, we've come a long way fast. We've got the master key for structure, the quality checks for form and truth, our bug scanner for fallacies, and even a little repair kit. So now, there's only one thing left to do. Let's put it all together with a quick workout to make these skills feel like second nature.
So, here is your 1-minute workout. I want you to find an argument. It could be in an article you're reading, a YouTube comment, anywhere, and just run it through this checklist. State the claim, list the reasons, and, do not skip this part, name the warrant. That's usually the weak link. Then, check its quality, and at the end, propose just one concrete improvement. Seriously, try doing this out loud. You'll be shocked at how quickly it all just clicks.
You know, I want to leave you with this thought, because it really gets to the heart of everything we've talked about. It's this idea that you don't need fancy language. What you need is a clean structure, stable meanings, and one fair rule that links your data to your decisions. It's not about sounding smart with big words. It's about clarity. It's about having a solid structure that connects your evidence to your conclusion. That, right there, is the real secret.
So that brings us to the end. You've officially got the complete toolkit. The world out there is absolutely swimming in arguments, just waiting for someone with a clear eye to come along and take a look. So the only real question left for you is, what argument will you test first? All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to build a mental toolkit, one that's going to help you spot flawed arguments from a mile away and think with a lot more clarity.
You know that feeling, right? You're listening to someone, maybe a politician, a salesperson, or even a friend, and they make a point, and your gut just screams, something is off here, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is. It's super frustrating.
And here's the thing, that's often by design. We are absolutely swimming in a sea of persuasion. We get hit with arguments all day long that are polished and shiny, specifically designed to sound convincing, even when the logic underneath is totally broken.
But here's the good news. We can absolutely fix that. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to assemble a really practical, powerful toolkit. And by the end of this, you'll be able to see those flaws clearly. And, even better, you'll know exactly how to fix them.
Okay, first up in our toolkit, we're going to tackle something I call common word traps. This is all about the language itself, the really subtle, sneaky ways that specific words can be used to mislead you.
You've seen these everywhere. We call them weasel words. They're these little modifiers like may help, or virtually, or studies suggest. They make a claim sound super impressive, but they avoid any real concrete commitment. They basically weasel out of making a real point.
So how do you fight back against weasel words? It's actually pretty simple. You just demand specifics. Someone says a product may help. You ask, okay, by how much? What's the effect size? A sale is up to 50% off. Ask, what's the average discount? The fix is always to replace that vagueness with precision.
And then you've got their close cousin, fuzzy terms. I'm talking about words we hear all the time: healthy, clean, safe, natural. They make us feel good, but without a really clear standard, they're basically meaningless. I mean, what does a healthy snack actually mean? The trick here is you have to force them to nail it down. If something's a healthy snack, okay, define the threshold. Does that mean it's under 5 grams of sugar? If an investment is safe, quantify the risk for me. And the classic, new and improved. You gotta ask, improved compared to what? And how are you measuring that improvement?
Okay, time for the second tray in our toolkit, spotting dangerous logic leaps. We're moving beyond just tricky words now and looking at the actual structure of an argument when it's built on a shaky foundation.
First up is a big one, the post hoc fallacy. It sounds fancy, but the idea is simple. It's when we assume that because event B happened after event A, then event A must have caused event B. And let me tell you, our brains absolutely love to fall into this trap.
This is the little mantra you need to burn into your brain. Just because two things happen in a sequence, it doesn't mean there's a causal link. After is not the same as because. Say it with me. After is not the same as because. It's your shield against this fallacy.
Another logic leap you'll see all the time is the slippery slope. This is when someone argues that if we allow one tiny little thing to happen, it's going to trigger this unstoppable chain reaction that leads to some totally disastrous outcome. The problem is they almost never explain how we actually get from that first small step to the horrible end result.
So how do you stop this? You just have to stop the leap. Demand they show you the map. Don't just accept this vague chain of bad things. Make them show you the actual steps. And here's the pro move. Ask them to state the probability of each of those steps happening. That usually stops a slippery slope argument dead in its tracks.
All right, for our final tool tray, we're going to become detectives. We're going to focus on finding the missing pieces. Because sometimes an argument's greatest weakness isn't what it says, but what it leaves out.
And that brings us to something called the hidden warrant. Think of this as the invisible glue of an argument. It's the unstated belief, the secret rule, that connects the evidence they give you to the conclusion they want you to reach. And if you can't find it, or if it's weak, the whole argument might be bogus.
Here's a great way to picture it. Imagine the evidence is on one side of a deep canyon and the claim is on the other. The warrant is the bridge that connects them. If that bridge is missing or if it's rickety and weak, the entire argument just collapses into the canyon.
Another huge missing piece is the false dilemma. This is a classic trap. Someone tries to back you into a corner by presenting only two choices, and usually one is terrible and the other is the one they want you to pick. But the trick is, there are almost always other options they're conveniently not telling you about. And the fix for this is so simple, it's almost beautiful. You just name a third option. When someone says it's either this or that, you break the frame. If they say we must either ban it or allow it, you can say, well, what about putting a fee on it or doing a pilot program with a sunset clause? The moment you introduce another possibility, the whole false dilemma just falls apart.
Okay, let's put this all together now. This is the master tool in our kit, your 1-minute argument fix. It's a super simple, fast process that combines everything we've just learned.
Here it is, just 5 steps. 1. State the claim. What are they actually trying to convince you of? 2. List the reasons. What evidence are they giving you? 3. Fix the meaning. Hunt down those fuzzy words and weasel words. 4. Find that hidden warrant. What's the secret rule connecting the reasons to the claim? And finally, 5. Offer an improvement. This little process gives you incredible speed and clarity.
All right, enough theory. Practice is where it's at. Let's do a quick lightning round and put these new tools into action. You ready?
Okay, first one. You see this on a cereal box. New and improved with natural goodness. What's wrong with this picture?
You got it, right? Improved is a total weasel word. Improved compared to what? And natural is a classic fuzzy term. It sounds great, but it's basically meaningless without a clear, specific definition. How about this one? A streaming service is trying to get you to upgrade your subscription. Their ad says, real fans go premium. Yep, this one is all about that hidden warrant we talked about. The secret rule they want you to just accept without thinking is that spending money is how you prove you're a loyal fan. Once you see that hidden assumption, the power of their claim just evaporates. So, this is your advantage now. You can fix meaning by calling out those fuzzy terms. You can add the missing warrant to see if an argument holds up. You can make sure the evidence actually matches the claim. Essentially, your new tools, your new superpowers, are speed and clarity.
So I'll leave you with this question. Go out there, listen to the world around you, and tell me, what argument are you going to see completely differently today?